Hello, my name is Pastor Kris Kollar. I'm the pastor of Pleasant Valley Lutheran Church near Malabar Farm and St. Paul Lutheran Church in Lucas, Ohio. Greetings. We are reading through the Bible with commentary. We are in the book of 2 Samuel, which really 1st and 2nd Samuel were written as one book in Hebrew. But when they translated it into Greek, because at one point the entire world spoke Greek, then it became two books because it needed two scrolls. Greek takes more space. Hebrew, when it's written in the ancient antiquity, ancient Hebrew, they didn't write any vowels and they didn't put any spaces. It's just one long string of letters. And you'd be surprised what a difference having spaces between words and vowels and punctuation makes things so much easier to understand. So there are times when there's a footnote that says translators are not sure exactly what this means. They do their best to try to figure out what the original intent of the authors was and to get that as accurate as they can. But sometimes they're just not sure. So we're in the book of 2 Samuel, and Saul died. King Saul dies at the end of the book, first book, and then David is immediately, pretty close to immediately, becomes the king of Judah. The southern part of what we think of as Israel was two, really, and even from the beginning was Judah in the south, because the 12 tribes, well, 11 tribes, not counting the Levites, were given different territories. But the tribe of Judah was large, and it had a large territory in the south. So Judah often is referred to separately from Israel, although all of them are Israelites, and they all together are sometimes referred to as Hebrews or the circumcised or as Israelites. But really there's this distinction between Israel in the north, Judah in the south. And so when King Saul is killed, David immediately becomes anointed and king of the south, but then they had Ishmael, who was the king in the north, until we were reading that Abner said, no, I don't think this is working out. So Abner is prepared to go work with David, and then his Joab kills him because Abner killed his brother Asahel in battle. Or you can say, well, it was battle. Apparently Joab did not forgive him for that and said, I will do revenge. So that was in chapter 4. Then Ishmael got assassinated. So 2 Samuel has many assassinations, murders, and other terrible things. But for right now, we're in chapter 5. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, look, we are your bone and flesh. For some time while Saul was king over us, it was you who led out Israel and brought it in. So, okay, we're Israel and you're part of Judah, but we're all Israelites, we're all Hebrews. And when we did have King Saul, you were the one that led out the army. You were the one that went out before everybody and fought. So we're okay with you. The Lord said to you, it is you who shall be shepherd of my people Israel, you who shall be ruler over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. At Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and at Jerusalem he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. So I have a note that says that his reign would have been around 1000 BC to 960 BC. So they date it basically 1,000 years before Jesus. Verse 6, the king and his men marched to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, who said to David, you will not come in here, even the blind and the lame will turn you back, thinking David cannot come in here. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, which is now the city of David. So Jerusalem was originally the city of Jebus, and the Jebusites lived there, and David took it and conquered it, so it became his city, the city of David, and it's often referred, we'll hear that even in the New Testament, they'll call it the city of David, meaning Jerusalem, meaning what had been Jebus and now is Jerusalem. Now the city of David. Verse 8, David had said on that day, whoever would strike down the Jebusites, let him get up the water shaft to attack the lame and the blind, those whom David hates. Therefore it said, the lame and the blind shall not come into the house. David occupied the stronghold and named it the City of David. David built the city all around from the Millo inward. And the footnote that I have says that Millo means filling. So there was some kind of fill or backfill or some area that had been filled up. And so he has now made a new wall around the city after he conquered it. And David became greater and greater, for the Lord, the God of hosts, was with him. Verse 11, King Hiram of Tyre sent messengers to David, along with cedar trees and carpenters and masons who built David a house. David then perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. Verse 13, in Jerusalem, after he came from Hebron, David took more concubines and wives, and more sons and daughters were born to David. These are the names of those who were born to him in Jerusalem: Shemua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Ibhar, Elishua, Nepheg, Japhira, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphalet. Verse 17, when the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, all the Philistines went up in search of David. But David heard about it and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. David inquired of the Lord, shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you give them into my hand? The Lord said to David, go up, for I will certainly give the Philistines into your hand. So David came to Baal Perazim, and David defeated them there. He said, the Lord has burst forth against my enemies before me like a bursting flood. Therefore that place is called Baal Perazim. Baal Perazim. Because Perez is, the Lord is Baal, so Baal Perazim is basically the Lord is bursting forth. The Philistines abandoned their idols there, and David and his men carried them away. Once again the Philistines came up and were spread out in the valley of Rephaim. When David inquired of the Lord, he said, you shall not go up, go around to their rear, and come upon them opposite the balsam trees. When you hear the sound of marching in the top of the balsam trees, then be on the alert, for then the Lord has gone out before you to strike down the army of the Philistines. David did just as the Lord had commanded him, and he struck down the Philistines from Geba all the way to Gezer. So he is trying to follow what the Lord is telling him to do, and the Israelites are following him, and because they're like, okay, we need a leader that will lead us out in battle, and David is definitely somebody who can do that. Chapter 6. David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. David and all the people with him set out and went to Baal-Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. They carried the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the ark of God, and Ahio went in front of the ark. David and all the house of Israel were dancing before the Lord with all their might, with songs and lyres and harps and tambourines and castanets and cymbals. Verse 6. When they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him there because he reached out his hand to the ark, and he died there beside the ark of God. So the ark of God is so holy, and originally it said when we read back in Exodus and Leviticus and Deuteronomy, this ark that is to hold the 10 Commandments and the tablets from God, that is this gold-covered box with a solid gold lid with cherubim over top of it. But the whole thing is to be wrapped up and to be carried on poles, and the people carrying it can't even see it. Nobody can see it because it's so holy, so special, so incredibly, like, you can't even just look at this thing, let alone reach out and touch it. And you say, well, he's trying to help it not fall on the ground. It's so holy and so precious that you have to be holy. You can't touch it. So at any rate, Uzzah dies. Verse 8, David was angry because the Lord had burst forth with an outburst upon Uzzah. So that place was called Perez Uzzah to this day, which is breakout against Uzzah. David was afraid of the Lord that day. He said, "How can the ark of the Lord come into my care?" So David was unwilling to take the ark of the Lord into his care in the city of David. Instead, David took it to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. Verse 12, it was told King David, "The Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God." So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And when those who bore the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox and a fatling. So now they don't have it on a cart, they're carrying it. So there's no shaking it, there's no jostling it, it's being carried. And they're sacrificing every 6 paces, so that's a lot of sacrificing. David danced before the Lord with all his might. David was girded with a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with shouts of the trumpet. Verse 16, as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, son of Saul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. They brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place, and inside the tent that David had pitched for it, and David offered burnt offerings and offerings of well-being before the Lord. When David had finished offering the burnt offerings and the offerings of well-being, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts, and distributed food among all the people, the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, to each a cake of bread, a portion of meat, and a cake of raisins. Then all the people went back to their homes. Verse 20, David returned to bless his household, but Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How the king of Israel honored himself today, uncovering himself before the eyes of his servant maids, as any vulgar fellow might shamelessly uncover himself." David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord, who chose me in place of your father and all his household, to appoint me as a prince over Israel, the people of the Lord, that I have danced before the Lord. I will make myself yet more contemptible than this, and I will be abased in my own eyes. But by the maids of whom you have spoken, by them I shall be held in honor." And Michal, the son of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. So it does not say, was that her, for whatever reason, and of course, as we've said before, to not have a child in that time in antiquity, in that culture, is beyond shameful. It's like, this is your security. This is the person who's going to look out for you in your old age. And this is what's going to keep you able to hold your head up, because you're not ashamed because you have a child, especially if you have a male child. So it's just that the way the culture was, that if you wanted to be a woman that had any kind of value, you had to have a child. So she has no children. And it doesn't say if that was because the Lord has punished her for her attitude, or more likely David has other wives and other concubines and does not need to go see Michal. So she does not ever have children to the end of her life, which is kind of tragic and kind of sad. But now, but now David is now king over all of Judah and Israel. And he's defeating the Philistines, and he's like, okay, let's bring the ark, which is not there, bring the ark here to Jerusalem, and kind of solidify that this is we follow God, and we are going to honor God, and God is going to be here in Jerusalem, in my capital, with me here. So, and to draw out just an interesting thing is that David is there dancing in a linen ephod. So I'm not sure exactly how much of his body an ephod covers, but clearly not very much. So it's basically dancing in his underwear, possibly in a piece of underwear that covers his front as well as his bottom, but not very much clothing for the king. And he's dancing before the Lord. And he doesn't care what other people think. He cares about honoring God. So I think there's a lot to be said for that all of us could do well with caring less about what humans think and caring more about what God would think. So now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look at you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace, like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for being here.